My fiancée extorted me with an insane contract the day before our wedding. I signed to lower her guard. But at the altar, I read every clause in front of 150 guests and left them speechless. I'm 28 years old. I work in tech. Well, I worked. I'll tell you about that later. And I need to get this story off my chest, because what happened 3 months ago basically destroyed what I thought was going to be my entire life. I guess I should start from the beginning, when I met Olivia like 4 years ago. But honestly, that part is kind of boring. You know, we met on an app, we went on dates, we fell in love, all very normal and nice. What wasn't normal, what was completely insane, was what happened the day before our wedding. Let me give you some context. Olivia and I were together for 3 years before I proposed, and then we were engaged for like 10 months planning this huge wedding that, spoiler alert, never happened. But at that moment, everything seemed perfect. I mean, yeah, we had our problems like any couple, but nothing serious, nothing that made me think she was capable of what she did. I worked at a tech company making good money. I wasn't a millionaire, but I was doing pretty well. And Olivia worked in marketing. She made decent money too. We'd been living together for like a year and a half in an apartment we paid for together, like 60-40 because I made a bit more, but it had never been a problem. There had never been any drama about money or anything like that. The wedding preparations were intense. You know how that is. Her mom, Pamela, was super involved in everything, choosing flowers and colors and I don't know what else. And Olivia's parents put down quite a bit of money for the wedding, like half the total cost or something like that. My parents contributed too, but less because, well, Olivia's family has more money than mine, and they wanted a big wedding. I would have been happy with something small, but Olivia was excited about this whole elaborate thing, and I loved her. So I said, okay, let's do it. Fast forward to the day before the wedding. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was at the hotel where we were going to stay that night. Because you know, the tradition of not seeing each other before the ceremony and all that. I was there with my friends having some beers, relaxing, and I get a message from Pamela, Olivia's mom, saying she needed to talk to me urgently about something important. I told her I was busy, but she insisted, said it was something that couldn't wait until after the wedding. I thought maybe there was some problem with the venue or the food or something like that. I don't know. I never imagined what was coming. Pamela arrived at the hotel like half an hour later and asked to speak privately. We went to my room and she pulled out an envelope from her purse, one of those big manila envelopes, and handed it to me with a smile that now, looking back, was completely fake. She told me, "This is something Olivia and I prepared to ensure the stability of your marriage." I opened the envelope confused, and inside was a contract, like a legal contract with formal language and everything. And when I started reading it, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The contract basically said I had to give Olivia 40% of my salary every month, transferred to a bank account in her name, for her to manage however she wanted. 40%. Can you believe it? And it wasn't an agreement like, let's pool money for the house or for shared savings. No. The contract specifically said that money was hers to use as she decided, without needing to consult me or justify what she spent it on. There were clauses about penalties if I was late on payments, about how this agreement didn't affect my obligation to pay half the household expenses. I mean, it was like the 40% was extra, on top of everything else. I stood there reading this, and felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water over me. I asked Pamela what the hell this was, and she told me, very calmly, that it was a way to ensure Olivia would be financially secure in the marriage, that it was something normal in many families, and that I should be grateful they were only asking for 40% and not more. I told her this was crazy, that we had never talked about anything like this, and she told me that Olivia wanted to wait until now to present it to me because she knew I might react badly and didn't want to ruin the months of wedding planning. I called Olivia immediately. She answered all cheerful, and I asked her about the contract, and there was a long silence on the other end. Then she told me yes, the contract was real, that she and her mom had been preparing it for months with a lawyer. I asked her why. Why would she do something like this without talking to me first? And she started with this whole speech about how she wanted to have financial independence, that her married friends had told her horrible stories about husbands who controlled all the money, and that this was her way of protecting herself. I told her I had never been controlling with money, that we had always shared everything equitably, and she said yes, but things could change after marriage and she needed this security. I was completely in shock. I told her I wasn't going to sign that it was absurd and unfair, and she told me, very seriously, that if I didn't sign, there would be no wedding. Just like that, as if she were asking me to pick up dry cleaning or something equally trivial. I told her she couldn't be serious, and she said she was completely serious, that this was a deal breaker for her. Pamela was there listening to everything and nodding as if this were the most reasonable thing in the world. I didn't know what to do, honestly. It was the day before my wedding. We had like 150 guests coming from different states. We had spent thousands and thousands of dollars. My parents were super excited, and suddenly everything was falling apart because of this shit contract I didn't even know existed until half an hour ago. I tried to reason with Olivia on the phone, but she wouldn't budge. She kept saying it was this or nothing, that if I really loved her, I wouldn't have a problem signing, because what did money matter if we were going to be together? My friends noticed something was wrong and asked me what was going on, but I didn't tell them anything at that moment. I just told them it was wedding stress. Pamela stayed there, waiting for my answer as if it were so easy, as if she wasn't asking me to sign something that would basically turn me into an ATM for her daughter. I told her I needed time to think, and she said there was no time, that she needed an answer that night because the contract had to be signed before the ceremony. I spent the next few hours in a kind of trance. I couldn't think clearly. I called Olivia like 3 more times, and each time it was the same conversation. Her saying, if I didn't sign, we wouldn't get married, and me saying this was crazy. At some point in the night, like 2 in the morning, I made a decision. I signed the contract. Yes, I signed it. But not because I agreed, but because I already had a plan in mind. See, I'm one of those people who thinks that if someone is going to betray you, especially in such a calculated and cold way like this, then that person deserves to have the truth come to light. Olivia and her mom had planned this in secret, waiting until the last possible minute to pressure me when I would have no choice to back out without causing a huge scandal. But I decided there was going to be a scandal anyway, only it would be on my terms. The morning of the wedding, I woke up with this horrible weight in my stomach. I got dressed in my suit, smiled for the photos, did everything you're supposed to do. But inside I was dead, like a zombie going through the motions. My parents were so happy, so proud, and I felt terrible because I knew what was going to happen. But I couldn't marry someone who had shown me she was capable of manipulating and betraying me like that. We got to the ceremony. It was at this beautiful place with gardens and everything. The weather was perfect, music was playing, there were flowers everywhere. Olivia looked incredible in her dress, I have to admit, and when she walked down the aisle with her dad, I was standing there thinking about all the plans we had made together, all the good moments we had shared, and part of me wanted to cry. But the other part, the part that was furious and hurt, that part was ready for what I had to do. The officiant started with the whole traditional thing. Welcome, we are here to unite these 2 people in marriage, blah blah blah. Then came the vows part, and I signaled that I had something to say first. I took out the contract from my inside pocket, where I had kept it folded, and unfolded it in front of everyone. The place went completely silent. People didn't understand what was happening. I started reading the contract out loud, word for word. All the clauses, the 40% of my salary, the penalties, everything. Olivia's face went from confusion to absolute horror in a matter of seconds. I could hear murmurs in the audience, people wondering what the hell was happening. Her mom, Pamela, tried to get up, but her husband stopped her. My parents were completely frozen in their seats. When I finished reading, I told Olivia in front of everyone, I thought we loved each other. I thought we were going to build a life together as equal partners, but what you asked me to sign isn't a marriage, it's an employee contract. And then I tore the contract into pieces, dropped the pieces on the floor, and left. Just like that, I walked down the aisle while everyone stared at me, open-mouthed, got in my car, which luckily already had my suitcases because we were going to leave for our honeymoon, and took off. I don't remember much of the drive back home. I was like on autopilot. I got a million calls and messages, but I didn't answer any of them. When I got to the apartment, Olivia wasn't there yet. I guess she stayed dealing with the disaster of the canceled wedding. I threw myself on the couch and finally allowed myself to cry. Like really cry. Because despite everything that had happened, I had really loved her, and the idea that it had all ended like this was devastating. The next few days were a nightmare. My parents came to the house super angry, saying I had humiliated them in front of all their friends and family. How could I do something like that in public instead of handling it privately? I showed them the contract, well, a photo I had taken before tearing it up, and explained everything. My mom started crying and my dad was quiet for a long time. Eventually, my dad said he understood why I did it, but that the way I did it had been extreme. I told him Olivia had been extreme, first by springing that on me the day before the wedding. What did they expect me to do? We had several difficult conversations, but eventually my parents understood my side of things. My mom even admitted that if something like that had been done to her, she probably would have reacted worse. Olivia's parents, on the other hand, sent me horrible messages saying I was a monster, that I had ruined their daughter's life, that I owed them all the money they had spent on the wedding. Olivia moved out of the apartment without even telling me. I came home one afternoon from work, like 3 days after the wedding disaster, and all her things had disappeared. Clothes, books, decorations, everything. She left the keys on the kitchen table, and that was it. Not a note or anything. It was weird being in that space we had shared and seeing all these holes where her things used to be, like holes in my life. Weeks passed, and I was basically functioning in survival mode, going to work, coming home, sleeping, repeating. My friends tried to take me out to bars and stuff like that, but I didn't feel like socializing. I kept getting messages from people who had been at the wedding. Some supporting me, others criticizing me, but I stopped reading the messages. After a while, because they were too much. Like 3 weeks after all this, Olivia's parents showed up at my apartment without warning. Well, Olivia's dad and Pamela. They knocked on the door on a Sunday morning, and when I opened it, there they were, with vengeful faces. They told me they were coming to collect their share of the wedding expenses. That since I was the one who canceled everything, it was my responsibility to reimburse them for everything they had paid, which was like $35,000 or something like that. I told them they were crazy, that I didn't owe them anything, that if they wanted to sue someone, they should sue their daughter for trying to extort me with that ridiculous contract. Olivia's dad turned red with rage and started yelling at me, saying I was ungrateful, that they had welcomed me into their family and I had betrayed them. Pamela was there, quiet but with a look of pure hatred, and I just wanted them to leave my house. I told them to get out or I'd call the police. Eventually they left, but not without first threatening me with legal action. I called a lawyer that same week, mostly to be prepared in case they really tried to sue me, and the lawyer told me they had no case, that I hadn't signed any agreement to pay for the wedding, and that the fact that they chose to spend that money was their problem, not mine. After that visit, I decided to call Olivia. It was the first time we had talked since the wedding, and it was a super awkward and tense conversation. I told her about her parents showing up at my apartment and demanding money, and she sighed and said she knew, that they were furious with her too, but they kept blaming me for everything. I asked her why. Why had she thought that contract was a good idea, and she was quiet for a moment before saying she had been influenced by her mom and her friends, that they had scared her into thinking that without some kind of financial protection, she was going to end up depending completely on me. I told her that would never have happened, that we had always been a team, and she started crying on the phone, saying she knew, that she had realized after everything exploded that she had made a huge mistake, but it was too late already. You know, you can't undo that kind of betrayal. You can't erase the fact that she was willing to manipulate me that way. I told her I hoped she found what she was looking for, but that I couldn't be part of her life anymore, and she said she understood. We hung up, and I felt empty, like not even sad anymore, just empty. I decided I needed big changes in my life. I couldn't keep the same job, in the same apartment, with all these memories. I quit my tech job, something my friends thought was crazy, but I had savings and I needed a change. My dad offered to invest in a business with me, something we had talked about years back but never did, and I decided it was the perfect time. We started a tech consulting business, basically me using my experience to help small companies with their systems. It was stressful at first, but it was also good to have something to focus on that wasn't all the drama of the canceled wedding. I moved to a new apartment, smaller but all mine, without ghosts of past relationships. Like 3 months after all this, I was at a bar with some friends on a Friday night, and guess who walked in? Yeah, Olivia. She wasn't alone. She was with a group of her friends, and when our eyes met, there was that awkward moment where neither of us knew if we should ignore each other or what. Eventually, she approached where I was. My friend stepped aside to give us space, and we stood there looking at each other for a moment. She looked different. I don't know. Thinner, maybe. Or more tired. She asked me how I was, and I told her good. That I had started a business with my dad. She said she had heard from mutual friends, and that it seemed great. Then, after a long silence, she told me she was sorry. That she was sorry for everything that had happened, that it had been the worst decision of her life, and that not a day went by without her regretting it. I don't know what I expected myself to say to that. Part of me wanted to yell at her, tell her all the pain she had caused me, but another part was already tired of all the drama and just wanted to close that chapter. I told her I appreciated the apology, but what happened, happened, and that we both had to move on with our lives. She nodded. She had tears in her eyes, but she didn't cry, and she gave me a quick hug before going back to her friends. That night, driving back home, I realized I had finally found something like closure. You know, that thing everyone says you need but is hard to get. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her either. It was more like a quiet sadness for what could have been but never was. The business with my dad is going well, better than we expected. My parents and I are on good terms again. They understand why I did, what I did. And me, well, I'm learning to be alone. To rebuild my life without having to depend on the idea of being with someone else. Did I do the right thing at that altar? Honestly, I don't know. To this day, I ask myself that question. Maybe I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have canceled the wedding privately instead of doing that whole public show. But I also think Olivia and her mom put me in that position by springing that contract on me at the last possible minute, knowing I would be under pressure and would probably sign out of desperation. So, maybe I did do the right thing by exposing what they were trying to do to me, by not letting them manipulate me. I don't know. I guess everyone can have their opinion on that. What I do know is that I don't regret not marrying someone who showed she was capable of betraying me like that. At least I'm clear on that.